What's up, you guys? Tim Trevathan with Tim Trevathan Homes here, your go-to Atlanta realtor, and it's the end of the year, which means we're doing some predictions of the housing market for 2024. I already did one on the Zillow predictions. Now I'm going to do one on the Redfin predictions and make it more centralized and focused on the Atlanta housing market because that's where I live and work. And for anybody that's wanting to move to Atlanta, Georgia, that I love to help, by the way, you can give me a call, reach me, however you want, call, text, email. This is the video for you. If you're thinking about moving to Atlanta, check out these predictions. So let's start with the first one. Prediction number one, home prices will fall 1%. Now, I would say that this could possibly be true, meaning that home prices aren't going to go up, and that would be a relief for buyers who've been waiting on the sidelines for so long. But if you look at the grand scheme of things, 1% is not a lot. In the grand scheme of things, it seems like basically home prices are going to kind of level off this entire year. I mean, we saw about a 5 to 7% decrease in 2022, and the rates spiked all the way up to 8% or 7% rather. And then this year they did go up to 8%. But what I wanted to mention for this year is we saw the opposite of last year. After the shock wore off, buyers started to see that these rates weren't going to change. They're in the market to buy. They're in need of buying. You know, there's the category of wanting versus needing to buy. Those that need to buy, they still ended up pulling the trigger and bought this year. And so home prices reached an all-time high back in June, July this past summer, surpassing the number from last year when it was at an all-time high back in around May of 2022. Basically, this prediction saying is that we're gonna be pretty level this coming year, and I can see that if rates stay the same and the inventory stays at an all-time low. However, I have to give my opinion on the Atlanta market, and I will say this, that with rates predicted to come down to 6% in the spring of 2024, and people wanting to move to the South, with the weather, with a less expensive area to live, with plenty of job opportunities in Atlanta, we could see home prices start to rise again here in Atlanta versus other cities across the country. Prediction two, new listings will tick up. Well, we are actually seeing that right now. In fact, we set a record for the months of October and November, I believe, but especially October, in the sense that we saw the most new listings of any month of October, year over year, all previous years compared. And that's a big deal. What does that say? It could be a number of indicators, hard to say for sure, but what I think, there's a lot of people that are in need of selling, that they've been waiting and waiting for so long, and they just haven't found the right time to sell, and then they're just at a point of losing patience. They're like, we need to sell, for various reasons, whether it's, marriage or divorce or downsizing because you're an empty nester, or upsizing because now you've got more kids and a bigger family, you got a job relocation. There are a lot of reasons for that, and so I think more listings are going to come on the market here in Atlanta, especially next year, as people are groaning to want to move, especially those that are in their homes for several years and it no longer fits their needs. They have to move. Prediction number three, home sales will increase and end the year up 5%. Now this I do agree with, and don't confuse home sales for home prices. So again, home prices they're predicting to be 1% lower by the end of the year, but we're gonna see more homes sold next year than this year. And definitely I could say that that is a very possible outcome because so many people have been waiting and now is the time to move. And yet 5%, while it seems modest, is still lower than previous years because every year the amount of home sales continue to decline. And so 5% is almost just getting back to where we were 2 years ago. Prediction number four, mortgage rates will steadily decline but remain above 6%. According to Lawrence Yun, who is the chairman for NAR, National Association of Realtors, who I oftentimes look up to because his predictions a lot of times have come true and they make sense, with the Federal Reserve predicting to halt the raising of the rate, which a lot of times affects the mortgage rates in this industry, it could definitely make the interest rates go down. In fact, with the news that came out a month ago that said Fed's gonna halt the raising of the rates next year, we already saw the response that came from that as rates went down from 8% about 2 months ago to around 7%, which is the steepest and quickest drop we have seen in a number of years. Now, I know historically 7% still sounds like a lot compared to just a few years ago where we're in the threes, But again, I'm talking about how fast it went from 1 percentage point to another percentage point down. Having said that, it's hard to say if it'll continue to go down, but according to Lawrence Yun, it will be in the 6s starting in the spring of next year, or possibly earlier. Prediction number 5, change will come to the real estate industry. Now, this has a lot of, reading between the lines. What could this actually mean in the big picture, in the grand scheme of things? Well, look, there are some buyers that may go directly through the listing agent. I can understand that it's already happened before many times. A lot of times it's common with new construction, but look, there's a reason for buyers agents representing buyers just as much as there are sellers being represented by their listing agents. And the good news is with the buyer agent, there's no fee that you have to pay them, and it's just to your benefit to be able to look over things, especially if you're a first-time home buyer, looking over a contract, understanding everything, having contractors and vendors to your disposal, because you don't know how many kind of repairs that you may have to do after you close on the home, and you need somebody that's readily available that can do the job for an affordable price. Another reason to have a buyer's agent, especially for new construction, is hey, look, you've got these options for designs, and I could suggest to you which ones will be the best, not just for your own taste, obviously you make the decision ultimately, but as far as resale value, what's gonna make the most sense? And if you're buying a house out of state, for example, you can't come that often to see the home. Now, I had this happen particularly with one client in Portland, Oregon. Now, she went under contract with the home, went through the entire inspection process, and had not seen her home once in person until we were about a week before closing, believe it or not. It was just based on the circumstances, that's the way it worked out. Having a buyer's agent in that kind of situation was very much needed because I was able to provide to her the videos and all of the pictures up front, get extra information, find out, coordinating with the listing agent, what and how many offers are on the table and how we can beat those offers out. Sometimes be able to build rapport with them. And in this case, I worked with a brokerage that the listing agent also worked with the same brokerage. So we already had that mutual connection, and I even knew that agent personally. Not to say that they would disclose everything to me, but I was able to build that rapport up to that point, and then much more than that when it came to getting insight on how to make her offer accepted. Prediction number 6, renting will lose its stigma. Now, what can I say? I am pretty sure this is gonna happen, and the reason why is because with the unaffordability with some housing in certain markets, it just makes more sense to rent because it's gonna be cheaper payment per month, and plus, the stigma being that sometimes you have an increase in violence or drugs, or the upkeep of the place is unkempt. So those are some of the stigmas that you would think when it comes to apartment complexes, for example. But now people are like, well, we have no choice. We have to make our home, set up shop here for the long term. And so it may attract people who are maybe in a different income bracket that typically would buy a house, where now it's become so unaffordable even for them that they now opt for the option of an apartment, and it no longer becomes a stigma. Prediction number 7, Biden has a housing problem, which could hurt his re-election bid. Well, look, hey, I don't talk about politics when it comes to my profession, but I will say for any president at this time, it could possibly hurt their re-election bid, which is the current state of the housing market, where we have lowest inventory of all time, not many homes to pick from to be able to purchase, with interest rates at 7%, hard to afford to purchase a home. Even with a down payment that is of the smallest margins, it's gonna make your mortgage payment astronomically higher, so it doesn't make sense to even have a small down payment. And it's hard for people to have saved up a large enough down payment to make it work to begin with. So I get that. Doesn't matter who's in office, that's gonna be an issue. But what I would say as part of the solution is try to find a house if you're looking to buy, one that is of smaller square footage that you originally anticipated that you weren't gonna buy, but now you need to be a little open to. Start looking at areas and cities that you were initially not interested in to move to. And also look at new construction where they're offering some of the biggest incentives going on right now, as low as 5% interest rates with the buy down of the rate and credits towards your closing costs. Especially this time of year, which it's creeping up to New Year soon, so I don't know how long this will last, but a lot of the biggest incentives going at the end of the year because these builders are trying to reach a certain sales quota and get these homes and inventory off their books. Now there's several other smaller predictions, such as there's more in store for 2024, big price declines in coastal Florida, wave of boomerang migration, local governments enact policies to improve housing affordability. Other things like prices will fall a lot in some metros and rise in others. They quote that coastal Florida is one that's going to see a significant fall in prices due to different things like disasters, higher insurance rates. And then there's other places where prices are going to go up, such as Albany, New York, Rochester, New York, Grand Rapids, Michigan, and so on. People will decide where to live based on in-office policies and so on and so forth. Local governments will focus on housing affordability. Here's the main thing. Here in Atlanta, Georgia, we see 30% of homes being purchased by institutional investors, meaning that's a huge competition we face that will keep prices high. At the same time, we have a lot more new construction than other cities, so you're gonna have more to choose from in that regard. You're still gonna have competition from out of state because there are people moving here from all over the country because of the affordability versus other places in America, especially on the West Coast and the Northeast. Now, obviously you got places cheaper than Atlanta too, but they may not have the diversity, the culture, the weather, the food, the restaurants, the shopping and dining experience that you may be looking for. And especially schools is another thing. We have 80% of the top 25 schools here in North Metro Atlanta area where I live and work. And so there's a lot of reasons for people wanting to move here that may not be as attractive in other places that will keep the prices higher here for the long term. So I hope these predictions were good and helpful and insightful. And if you liked it, please subscribe, check out my other videos, and I'm gonna have a lot more content coming in 2024 and some interesting stuff that you have not seen before. So stay tuned.